Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
I'm Nayar.
And I'm Kavora.
And we're going to teach you how to play Star Trek Catan. This is a game produced by Mayfair Games in 2012. It was designed by Klaus Tuber. It accommodates 3 to 4 players, takes roughly just over an hour, and it has so much replayability. It's one of those gateway games. People who are new to the gaming hobby or who are just casual players love it, but since there are elements to the game that change all the time, it has multiple ways to play it. It's never the same game twice. That's one of the things that I love about it, is that the versatility of the game. It's based on the original Catan, so if you know the rules of the original Catan, it's almost entirely the same, except it does have more flavor text that relates to Star Trek, plus some additional cards that we'll talk about that add to the gameplay and make it feel more like you're having members of the Enterprise helping you on your ship. I love the box art as well. Not only do we see the Enterprise, the movie version, the refit essentially, but also a red planet, and this makes reference to the original Catan. We see it looks like city building on top of a space station. What I said about the replayability and how it changes from game to game, a lot has to do with the board itself. So it's a hexagonal board, and each of these planets or pieces are movable and replaceable. So you randomly sort through them and place the hexes around the board, around this border, on the inside of it, actually. And so this is the suggested beginner game, but when you randomize it, every time you play it, the planets are going to be in different positions. The numbers associated with the planets are going to be different on the planets as well. You have a variety of cards that represent dilithium, water, food, oxygen, tritanium. Combinations of these cards are going to allow you to build more outposts, more stations, and build a larger fleet. All this is going to relate to your goal. Your goal in the game is to get 10 victory points. That is 10 points at the end of the game. And I'll show you how that's done. You have these cards on the side that will help you to do that. You have various personnel that could come aboard your ship and offer their assistance, such as Uhura, Scotty, Spock, Sulu. And every player has a different color. You have to build based on your color, and I'll show you what it means to build and the advantage of such. So you start the game out, randomly one person, you pick your colors, then one person starts to place on the corners of these hexes. You're going to put an outpost. So an outpost is one of these pieces. You put an outpost down, and then a ship right next to that outpost. What this is called is a space lane. So if red were to go first, let's say red wanted to put an outpost here, and then put a ship next to him. The next player is able to build an outpost as long as it's 2 spots away. So if you notice, all the outposts are at least 2 spots away. For example, you could not build an outpost right here because it's not 2 corners away. You go around clockwise, you build an outpost, you put a ship next to that in the space lane. Then you do the reverse. You build an outpost, put a ship, and the difference between an outpost and the space station is an upgrade to the outpost. You just put the habit ring on top of it. On the reverse, when you go around the second time to do it, you give each player a personnel card that's going to help them. So the first player, it's listed here, A1, would have Uhura start out. Next player would have Scotty to help them out, so on and so forth. Then essentially what you're going to do is roll the dice. Oh, I'm sorry, each person will get a resource card associated with where their outpost is. Now I'll explain what that is. If you notice, here let's take white for an example. It has a white planet, a blue planet, and a green planet associated with this outpost. So if this was the second outpost to be placed on the reverse turn, that means that this player would get a resource card that is white, blue, and green. White, blue, and green. So that is oxygen, water, and dilithium. If this player had the, let's say this red player, this was the second turn around on the building stage, place their marker here, this player would start out with a blue, red, and yellow card. Blue, red, yellow. So tritanium, food, and water. You're going to constantly build up your hand of cards. With these cards, with these resources that you're receiving, you will be able to build. For example, you can build a starship along a space route if you have one green card and one red card. That is dilithium and tritanium. You could turn those cards into the bank and get a ship to put it in your space lane. You wouldn't get any victory points at the end, but it's going to help you in either building the longest route of ships or to be able to build another outpost, because you'll need outposts to gain points, but in order to gain outposts, it has to be adjacent to a ship. Notice, if you wanted to build an outpost, you would need to accumulate a green, a red, a yellow, and a white card. To build a starbase, which would give you 2 victory points at the end, you would have to have an outpost already built, but then you would have to get 2 whites and 3 blues. So 2 oxygens, 3 waters. I like to use the analogy of Monopoly. You need to have a house in order to build a hotel first. Then you have the opportunity of getting development cards. Now, development cards are your chance cards, your wild cards, in the sense that you don't know what's in this blind deck. I'll give you an example of some of these cards. So you could pull a research station card, which says when you play this progress card, immediately take 2 resource cards of your choice from the supply. If you pull a time warp card, you keep this face down because, yes, it gives you a victory point at the end of the game. Remember, the goal is to get 10 victory points, so this is a great one. Utopia Planitia, when you play this progress card, you may immediately build 2 starships for free. Another type of victory point card, Monopoly. When you play this progress card, you immediately choose any one resource. All players must give you all cards they have of that resource. So this is part of the strategy of watch what other people are playing, watch what other people are holding. Because if you were to play this card, you could accumulate a ton of cards of a resource that you need, that you're looking to build. Starfleet Intervenes. When you play this card, immediately move the Klingon battlecruiser and randomly draw 1 resource cards from any one player with an outpost or starbase adjacent to the Klingon battlecruiser's new location. That's something we haven't spoken of yet. In the original Catan, this would be the Thief, but here it's the Klingon. The Klingon starts out in the asteroid field. There is no points built up with the asteroid field. The Klingon gets the move when you roll a 7, so we'll talk about the mechanics and the dice rolling. So you have the game started, everyone has their pieces, their outposts, and their starships. You roll and play. So when you roll the dice, whatever, let's say this is an 11 that I rolled. You look for the 11 on the board. So anyone who has an outpost adjacent to an 11 would be able to accumulate cards based on that. So we look at the blue has a connection here to 11. So that means the blue player would be able to get a water card. Anybody who has, whether it's your turn or not, anybody who has an outpost adjacent to one of the planets that was rolled, that is the number on here that is rolled, is able to accumulate. For example, if the blue player rolled a 10, everyone that has something 10 would be able to get whatever resource is there on the 10. So we look at blue. Since this is a space station, you would get 2 cards of white. Red has an outpost on number 10. So red would get 1 card. And is there another 10 on the board? You look around, you look around. Yes, there is, right here. That means yellow. Yellow would get 2, since that is station. We'll get 2 yellow there. And then white would get 1. You're going to keep doing that around and around till you build up a hand, and you're able to buy things that are listed on your building costs. You're looking to gain victory points. So every time you build something, that's closer to getting your victory points. And that's essentially the basis of the game. Now you do have, like I said, everyone's going to start out with someone on the Enterprise is going to assist your fleet in some way. And on your turn, you could play, you can either buy something, build something, or even play one of your resource cards here. Now, for example, Uhura has the Force Trade ability. One time on your turn, you may demand 1 resource card from up to 2 players. The cards must be the same resource type. For each resource card you receive, give the respective player 1 resource card of your choice in return. So you're asking, well, what's the deal with getting resource cards from other players? If I'm getting resources at every round, wouldn't I have enough resources to buy what I want? And the answer is no. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm yellow over here. I can only get resources from the planets that I'm adjacent to. So I could get something here on this yellow planet. I could get something from the white, the red, or the blue planet. So if I wanted to either build a starship or build an outpost, I would need dilithium, which is green. I would need to get resources from a green planet. Well, how would I do that if none of my outposts were associated with a green planet? The only way to do that is to use my special ability card, or I could always trade with another player. Let's say I'm accumulating a ton of food cards, but I notice another player is accumulating a ton of green cards. I could make deals with them. I could say, I'll trade you 1 for 1, and the player said, no, it's not worth it to me. Well, how about if I give you 2 food cards for 1 of your dilithium cards? So I can bargain. I could use what I have to trade resources. Another thing that I could always do is trade 4 cards of the same type to the bank for 1. So let's say I have a glut of food resources, but I want dilithium resources. I could trade 4 of my food resources for 1 dilithium to the bank. If I get an outpost on the edge of space, I'm able to actually barter better. If I have an outpost over here, I could trade in 2 for 1. Over here, 3 for 1, 2 for 1, and so on and so forth. So there is an advantage to being on the edge. Yes, I'm not going to be able to get the amount of resources. The chances are lower of getting resources on the dice rolls on the outer edge, but I do have the greater bargaining ability on the outer edge. Another way of building resource points or victory points is by gaining victory or more through these 2 cards. There's 2 cards here. One, the longest supply route. The first person to have 5 ships in a row will gain the longest supply route victory card. You will get 2 points. You will keep this card to the end of the game unless somebody makes a longer route. For example, if blue were to build 6 ships, blue would now take the card from me. This is a victory point card that you're going to hold on to until someone breaks it. Another way to gain victory points is largest star fleet. Remember these random cards over here? There's quite a few that are listed Starfleet intervenes. This was the knight in the original Catan. What you're going to do is just keep holding on to these cards. If you have the largest Starfleet, after you've played this card, hold on to it. And once you play 3, you're going to have this card to add to your victory points. And that's essentially it. Star Trek Catan. absolutely love playing this game. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. The Klingon. Number 7. If you roll a 7, it's the thief. That means that you get to place the Klingon anywhere you want if you roll a 7. So if I'm yellow, I want to place it somewhere that's going to hinder other people, but not necessarily me. For example, I'm going to put it right here. That means anytime someone rolls a 10, these two people will not be able to gain any cards on rolls until this gets to move again. And I'm also able to steal a card from someone else. So I'm able to thief a card as well as hinder the play until this Klingon moves. So that's the point of moving the Klingon. You're going to when you roll a 7, you strategically move the Klingon counter to someone else to hinder their developments. And that's it. That's the rules of the game. It's a great game to play because of how much it changes, and it's a standard at a lot of tables. Don't forget to check out our podcast, StarPodTrek, for more classic Star Trek information, reminiscing about the past and how Star Trek really is the greatest science fiction franchise of all time. Live long and prosper.